Karen Williams. I am the Hub co-chair along with Lauren, and I'll be facilitating today's meeting. So we're calling our meeting to order under Portland City Code and state law. The Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Hub believes and values and acts on anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with Hub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, and particularly that conduct that's targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means that we step up as a community when there is wrongful conduct, and we foster a space of learning and growth. We put these principles into action by being active and deliberate, by speaking up and speaking out. Each of us is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct but not the person.
Hi, my name is Amy Archer-Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you are addressing. The chat box is only viewable by the co-hosts, myself and Jonna Lynn. Please limit chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for some assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and haven't been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. We may lower your hand once you begin speaking, just to maintain the flow of conversation. Public comment periods, the public can raise their hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and if connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute and unmute. Public comment will be taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with myself or Jonna Lynn, or raise your hand during that comment period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. The meeting is being recorded. Pass it back to you.
All right, so let's take a quick look at our agenda for today. And Amy, are we at quorum yet, or are we still waiting for a couple folks?
Oh, sorry, I am scrolling you through by when I'm trying to look at who's in the list. So it looks like we still just have 3 voting members. So we're still short. So we won't be able to make formal full board decisions, but as a subcommittee could make decisions about what we're working on in between.
Okay, all right, very good. So we will start with our usual disclosure of communications, if any, and see if there are any members of the public that would like to make comments to the board. Staff have some updates for us, and then we three can make some not formal decisions, but some decisions amongst ourselves, what we would recommend to the full board for next steps on the our engagement with the council and on the budget items. And then at a few minutes before 12, let's see. Oh yes, we want to talk about recruitment, schedule, get some volunteers to help listen to the videos of the, I believe, 11 members of the public who have expressed an interest in being on the board, and look ahead to our work plan, what we have accomplished, and maybe looking ahead to what our next work plan will look like. And then and staff have a few announcements. So we can accomplish a lot of that with 3 people. Of our pub members here, do any have any disclosures of communications? Right. Let us move on then. Are there any members in the audience, public members, that would like to testify to the board or submit written testimony?
Morning, everybody. This is Jim Abrahamson. I have no comments this morning.
Well, thank you for being here, Jim.
You're more than welcome.
Staff have not received any in advance or any requests during the meeting.
Okay. Well, let us go ahead and move on then. We once again can't do those fabulous minutes April 1st and 17th, but maybe by the end of the meeting we'll have a few more folks. And okay, so Amy or Jonalyn, are you doing the updates?
Yeah, so staff can take the lead on these. So just a reminder to folks about stipends. The forms are due soon. So if you haven't gotten them in, please submit those. We're hoping to process them next week. And then we wanted to talk briefly about schedule issues that we saw coming up in the coming month or so. And so wanted to just flag for the group, without a lot of you here, we anticipate collecting more information via survey so that we can poll folks and see what flexibility is. We do have a meeting scheduled for the first meeting is June 3rd, and don't see any issues related to that. But the third Thursday meeting falls on Juneteenth, which is a holiday. And so we wanted to just open up the thinking and ideas around whether to reschedule that meeting to, one of the Thursdays prior or after, or the Friday after. It can be challenging with the group to find alternates, because I know you guys set these schedules in advance, and especially since they take place during a typical workday. So we acknowledge that. I did want to just flag that we did have a request from staff with Water Bureau and BES indicating by mid to late June that they have some content related to affordability strategy that they were hoping to get feedback from PUB. And it's an area where there's particular interest of PUB in engaging. So we see that as a high priority. So I think there's a benefit to making sure that we can have that conversation at a time where we can try to get as much full membership of the PUB present for a meeting. So we will survey staff. I did check to see whether the 1st July meeting might be a potential for that, but unfortunately the key staff, the 1st July meeting falls on 4th of July week, and a lot of people are out of the office that week, and so it's not one that staff would be available for. So we would need to find an alternate date if we want to try to accomplish that during this time period where it would be beneficial. We are continuing to, we'll talk some about the recruitment a little bit later on, but we're also looking to the July meetings and some of the challenges with reaching quorum, and just doing some thinking around how to make the best use of the time and continue to move work forward, and starting a conversation about potential field trip or other options that might make sense during that same time frame. So look for a survey that should be coming out shortly, just around your personal availability and some feedback from each of you on what you'd like to see during that time period, but also can open the floor if there's anything you want to share or discuss openly right now.
Any thoughts, Lauren or Kyle or Joe is here on
Yes, Kyle Chipman, voting member. Just a quick question. Are we even for our existing members, is anybody hitting a point of escalation where like they've missed so many meetings concurrently that it's their participation's becoming called into question?
We have not had a conversation with the chairs or leadership yet about it, but we do have one member that has missed several consecutive meetings, so we will discuss that. We had planned to, particularly since recruitment is underway and, you know, we're going through that process, so that if there is some challenges related to their schedule and participation, that we could have a direct conversation and identify whether it makes sense to continue or not.
Cool, thank you. Also, actually, never mind. I'm going to hold my next question till we talk about the recruitment portion of the agenda. I'll just be present. I don't know when I'm traveling. I have some travel upcoming, but I'll be, if I'm not literally in the air, I'll be present.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
This is Lauren, a voting member. I know, excuse me, I'll be in the field for our June 3rd meeting. So it just depends on my field schedule if I'll be able to join that meeting. I think for the June 19th, I guess my question is like, will staff be away for the holiday? And in that case, like I would like to respect that schedule, especially in honoring this holiday, especially considering our commitment to anti-racism. I think honoring that holiday by taking a break makes sense. But I also want to recognize, you know, scheduling and availability around that. So I think a poll would maybe make sense just to kind of get everybody's availability.
Excellent. Thank you both for that input, and I will throw in mine. I absolutely concur that we should honor the holiday on June 19th. So I would certainly like to try to reschedule that. And it seems like the simplest might be to just push it out 1 week to June 26th. But that may bring its own challenges. So same time, I was thinking, you know, same time, same place, but just move it out a week so the current board could still hear the affordability conversation. And I was also thinking, you know, why we would need another meeting in June, at which we really do need quorum, is I believe then we would be making the recommendation on the candidates, right, that have applied to the board, and essentially forwarding that on to city council. So it seems like we need to do that before the end of June, because starting in July, our board will be really small because existing members will have left and new members won't have joined yet. So
that was actually my Kyle Chipman, voting member. That was my thought or question as well. I was going to save for the recruitment section, but yeah, that's the timing of recruitment relative to our meetings. And just for devil's advocate, pushing out to the 26th of June, which I'm fine. If we are to keep the regular cadence, that puts the 1st of July as the Tuesday immediately following that Thursday. So maybe we just stagger all of these or build our meetings around recruitment. Again, based on if the current member wants to stick around and bring new members on.
Yeah, because our first Tuesday is actually July 1st, right?
Yes, and July, and we'll get into this with recruitment as well. You know, we have some schedule challenges around that just because the process is a longer one going through council and committee. And, you know, so yes, you are 100% correct that our ideal goal is that we would in June have a quorum of pub to be able to advance the recommendation to council. In absence of that, we would rely likely on the chairs to approve advancing something, which is the alternative if we cannot reach quorum. So
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I guess that's true.
we'll send out the survey and we'll look for feedback from those who aren't in the room today, who also have may have some schedule specifics, but that Thursday, the 26th, was one of the potential dates that we were going to start as one to consider to see if that might be the easiest way for folks to plan around it, just pushing it back 1 week exactly. So we will follow up. All
Okay,
right.
budget updates.
So
I have a quick question before we move on.
Yeah.
And this is kind of in line uh with recruitment, but may impact the schedule. I believe, Karen, your membership ends this year, right? Because of the length. Okay, sorry, I don't know if this is okay to talk about right now. But I just didn't know if that would impact. When does that end? Just curious, like, because that would make me the only co-chair. Would that be in July?
yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
Karen's
afraid,
unmuting.
I am afraid that is true, Lauren.
Okay. That's fine. I just was curious so I can be prepared. And that's something we can discuss offline, how I can you know, as be available as much as I can, but just wanted to be have that on my radar. Thank you.
Sure.
Kyle Chipman, Karen, if you're stepping away, my schedule and timing should be, if not freeing up, at least I'm being more thoughtful and intentional with my commitments and energy, where I can step in and help you out as co-chair to fill the role as Karen leaves as a pressing need, Lauren.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That is awesome.
I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but we'll miss you greatly, Karen.
Yes, we certainly will. So we will, yes, we'll have more conversation also about co-chair and appreciate Kyle's willingness to volunteer. So we'll have a conversation with the full pub to move that forward and get that process approved through the mayor's office. And in the interim, until it's formally approved, we will just discuss with members managing that workload, whether the appointment is official or not, as of that first meeting or whenever those meetings take place. So we'll continue to juggle that with you as staff. So if there's no more specific about the schedule right now, I don't want to do all the talking today, but there's a lot that's happened in the 1 week since we met, even with back-to-back weeks. These have been busy weeks because it's like the height of budget season and just lots of transition and council conversations. So there are some highlights that I hoped to cover with you today. I also see that we have some bureau staff as well, so encourage them to chime in. I thought we'd start first just with kind of the time progression, and first hear briefly from those who provided testimony at the rate hearing. We've shared the links to that and the high level outcome. But as we kind of move forward in time and debrief on some of the other work sessions, which is what I'll do next after we talk a little bit about the rate hearing, then whatever the takeaways are from that rate hearing can be part of what informs what, if any, next steps the board wants to take. So let's start with the rate hearing, if that makes sense.
You want to go first, Lauren?
Sure. Yeah. Experience was, I mean, about what I expected. I mean, obviously the timing of it can be kind of in flux, but pub staff was great at keeping us updated. I also was just like flexible that day, so I was able to keep the live stream on one of my screens while I worked, so I could kind of, you know, tune in while I could when I had the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, having the talking points was really helpful. I know this isn't really helpful, but I don't know that I have any recommendations. I think it went really well, and I appreciated all the input. I know that's not great feedback, and if I think of something, I'll make sure to note it. But I think, yeah, it went as seamlessly as it possibly could for a situation that was kind of in flux. Also, I would just say it felt really rewarding to provide that testimony.
Yeah, I have very similar thoughts as Lauren. I thought was, you know, Amy and John Lynn, your all the juggling and preparation, and I mean it wouldn't have happened if, you know, you at whatever it was 6:30 at night after our last meeting weren't like filling in the forms that needed to be filled in, so Lauren and I could provide that testimony on behalf of pub. I mean, so exactly, I mean, that's my feedback, is you both are awesome and we couldn't have done it without you. um and that's just crucially important, you know, looking ahead, right, to the next folks that will be testifying, is, you know, having that staff expertise in working within the system that we have that allows us to provide feedback. I mean, that's what we need we need you to guide us through that and make sure we're in the right place at the right time. um, I thought the technology worked really well, and I mean, I guess that's a credit to the staff at the city council, you know, that set all that up, and it just worked super seamlessly to be able to, um, you know, when the time came, you know, to be able to unmute and speak, and just all the technology worked really well. So I was pleased, you know, that there weren't technology hiccups, which it seems like there almost always are, and everything just went like clockwork there. You know, our testimony was very brief, but I think, again, thanks to the thoughtfulness of all of pub and, you know, putting those thoughts into, and then Amy, you know, condensing them into concise talking points. I felt like that was 3 minutes really well spent. I think and Lauren and I both being able to testify, so we actually got 6 minutes, you know. I felt like those were 3 very meaningful minutes. We got a lot of important stuff said, I guess. So there's that, and yeah, that's where I'll close my feedback. I think it all worked very, very well.
Kyle Chipman, voting member. I listened to the recordings, and it feels like continuing to just show up for testimony, to have not just our voices heard, but as representatives of pub, and to reinforce and create continued awareness of us as an organized body, to provide at least feedback and a voice in the process. It feels like there's value in addition to the actual points that are raised. I have additional questions on the larger topic of budget, but Lauren, do you have something in direct response to the prompts on the screen that you want to raise before I ask my question?
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Lauren, voting member. I just wanted to add, and forgive me, I don't remember specifically if this was the case with Kyle and Julia's testimony as well, but having the written testimony to kind of point back to, especially given the limited time, I think was really helpful, so that like if I kind of found myself running long, I was able to say, please see more details in the written testimony. And Karen, you brought up a good point. The technology was pretty seamless, but I wasn't able to turn on my camera because I didn't know how. And I think that like when possible, providing having a face to the voice can be valuable, no pressure ever, always, but like I had wanted to, and I think it was my fault. Like, I think they like added me as like invited me as a panelist, but it still gave me an option to join as like an attendee or a panelist. And I think that impacted, maybe, I'm not sure. So that's something that was an issue that I ran into that I would want to know a bit more beforehand next time to make sure I could show my face that I'm a human and not just a voice. Anyway, yeah, sorry, just some last minute feedback. Thanks.
Cool. I will take the floor unless Amy or Jonah, if you have any thoughts you want to share.
No, thank you, Lauren, for that. That is actually really helpful because that kind of technical issue we certainly can investigate and make sure that we follow up on. I think the only other piece, again, is we got very fortunate that especially with limited pub members, that the volunteers had significant flexibility that day because of how late it ended up running. So, I still fundamentally don't love the having less clear times that we can narrow for you all as volunteers. So we'll continue to try to advocate for that, both with engagement staff who are looking at, kind of that function as a core citywide service, and then also just when we're coordinating with specific committees and having conversations. So I think as staff, I would still raise that just out of respect for your time and ability to be present, because the flip side of that would have been missing it altogether just because the time didn't work because of conflicts. And we faced that same challenge in the when Kyle and others were testifying at the prior session. So want to continue to work on that piece. So Kyle, back to you, and then it might lead naturally into some of the next budget updates. So,
Absolutely. That is the nature of the next set of questions. My questions, Kyle Chipman, voting member. My questions are directed primarily to Farshad and Cecilia, but really anybody who can respond and answer. I listened to many of the council meetings and committee meetings, and I've also kind of just extracted all from the mayor's proposed budget, looking at line item, just to orient myself around language and service. But I'm specifically wondering, and I asked this in a public forum, so however much you want to share, what you are seeing in these deliberations, what is in sync with your expectations, what it might be becoming problematic from just the health and welfare of the two bureaus, what you're seeing come to pass, and if there's any points you want to raise or flag for consideration, or if there's some way we can support. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. For the record, my name is Farshad Aladadi. I'm the Business Services Group Manager at BES. Kyle, I appreciate your question. My comments are going to be unvetted personal responses, so please take everything with a grain of salt. I think my observations about our budget conversations with council generally are that we're in a period of education for the council. Many members, perhaps most members, have very little understanding of the utilities beyond just superficial understanding. And it's been our challenge to explain our funding mechanisms, distinguishing those mechanisms from the general fund mechanisms for funding other programs in the city, and to orient the council to how our funding and our rate structures and our SDCs, everything that comprises our revenue, is established to meet current and future obligations and address current and future risks. And the timing of how we forecast revenue and how we budget over the long term doesn't exactly sync with kind of the immediacy of a lot of the policy questions that are being debated. And it's making the trade-off discussions a little bit challenging to get through. The short-term trade-offs to bridge current year financial gaps and understanding the long-term financial implications and risks that are going unresolved when we are chipping away in the early years at our available resources. That, you know, we're trying to establish those resources over time so that we have sufficient pool of resources in the future to address pretty substantial obligations without having shocks to our rate increases. You know, our ideally, we are trying to smooth those expenses out through steady, predictable, and sustainable rate increases that minimize the impact to our customers, but start to accumulate those resources in time for when they're needed. And when we have these kind of current year interventions that disrupt that planning, I'm not sure that council really understands that the implications of those decisions and the risks that the city is, as a consequence, accepting. So, you know, I think that's just part of the challenge. My hope is that over this, of course, we're having a work session today, and there'll be some opportunities to deepen council's understanding. And then over the subsequent months and budget cycles, future budget cycles, our hope is that the understanding will be there and that the Bureau's priorities, the utility priorities, will get more firmly incorporated into the city's priorities. I think I don't want to take all the air in the room, but I'll just say that, you know, one of the talking points that DCA Donapal has made repeatedly in these work sessions is the work of the public works service area and utilities specifically are fundamental to a healthy, functioning city. And we are seeing those services diminish, infrastructure is crumbling. Point of reference, we've had 3 sinkholes emerge in the last month within the city because of failed sewers. One of them is a brick sewer that was built in 1889, collapsed near Providence Park. This is the kind of infrastructure that we're trying to build resources to replace so that they'll be there for the next 100 years. And when we have these current year interventions that chip away at our savings, we're really creating risk for future generations. And there's a generational equity issue that is inherent to these decisions that really needs to be surfaced and owned by the policymakers.
Any complementary takes or unique perspectives, Cecilia, or what Farshad laid out is very much in sync with what you're experiencing as well for the unfolding budget conversations at council.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, I think Farshad, I'm sorry, Cecilia here in Port Water Bureau. Certainly agree with Farshad. I do believe there is still a learning curve with council on the utilities. And their focus right now is, of course, the budget on the general fund side. So we're hopeful that going forward, you know, we'll be able to educate them a little bit more on the longer term financing. And yeah, the importance of sort of having a more stabilized rates going forward is what we will need to ensure that we're maintaining our systems. You know, obviously some of them are there, and Councilor Green was the one that sort of championed having our rates restored to the forecast, which was great. And that's the same conversation that we're hearing here as well, which is again great. You know, I think it's a balance, right, between rate increase and affordability, and that is something that we will certainly want to continue to work with PUB and our council on.
Thank you, Cecilia and Farshad. I have one additional question that kind of follows up on this point, and then I'll yield the floor for just more open conversation. My question is, what role do you see the adoption of a citywide asset management strategy or platform playing in making consolidating the point of reference and the point of reporting for long-term investment and deferred risk, or risk mitigation? In how big a role does that play? And also, as we're in a budget crunch for both people, time, resource, all of it, how big of a lift is that adoption when you're looking at we have to cut services, and now we're trying to invest and add something new? And that's an ignorant question too. I don't really understand the back end, but at a surface level, it kind of makes sense to me.
So yeah, I'll go first unless you want to go. Okay. Well, at a very minimum, I think it sends a very strong signal from a policy perspective that the backbone of the city is a healthy infrastructure, and the discipline of managing that infrastructure needs to mature and get coordinated in the city. And I think what was approved this week is that signal. But that is not the solution. And I'm sure many of us have had been in a lot of strategic planning exercises within our respective organizations. And there's a lot of effort that goes into it. And it seems like you can, say, good job, guys, we built a strategic plan, and it sits there and it doesn't get implemented, and the momentum wanes, and there's a lot of inertia that's just hard to overcome. So I think the real benefit of an asset management policy and a program of managing the full life cycle of our assets is where the heavy lifting is. This is a necessary but insufficient step to get us to where I think the city needs to be in terms of effective asset management. I think in different forums, you've heard versions of what the city's asset investment backlog is, and it's in the billions of dollars. The scale of solving that problem is existential for the city. And we need to be clear-eyed about what it's going to take to start bridging the investment gap or accepting the risks of failure. And if you look at the vintage of our assets, failures will only increase in frequency from here on out until we resolve this. So there is a clock ticking, I think, and it's a very challenging, from my perspective. The burden of being a policymaker in the city with all of the pressing immediate issues and the long-term issues is huge. It's almost an impossible task, to balance the short-term needs of the city, houseless response, and the like, with these long-term investments. But we have to keep both truths in mind, and we can't sacrifice the future needs for addressing only the short-term needs. And I think the asset management framework helps us have a more structured and strategic approach for both making investment strategies within the city, and then funding the appropriate levels of operations and maintenance of those assets to maximize their lifespan. I think this is the starting place, but it's not the solution. The solution is going to be sustained effort and prioritization. And I see Director Liu is on the call with her hand.
Thank you, Farshad. And I can also add on to what Farshad just said, and Kyle, for your question too, which is a really great insight for how we can inform project prioritization, utilizing information-based asset management approach. As Farshad laid out, we have $6.8 billion of backlog, including water and BES all along. And then having a citywide program will be really helpful, and also highlight this important infrastructure that the both bureaus play a role to support the city. I think the other key part of this is how do we develop this decision-making governance process as we are moving forward, and what is the level of service at the city level, at the utility levels between the two utilities too. What is pipes breaking versus treatment plant needs upgrade and everything. So there is still a level of service and also the impact to the communities, and how do we bring equity to be part of this conversation. So it's really a complex decision-making, prioritization, policy discussion too. And then the other part on top of that is also climate and seismic risk. So not only we have this aging infrastructure, but also how do we mitigate the risk on climate and the seismic that we all are being part of this zone as well. And then just another part is the potential regulation. So, we are really trying to catch up with the aging infrastructure, but potential PFAS and other regulations that could be huge, millions of dollars of money that the utility needs to be preparing for to fund the technology to address those future regulations too. So there is a legislation, there is a policy, there's how do we shape this in the utility frame. So I'm not sure I'm helping to paint a bright picture, but I just also want to share additional perspectives and seeing how complex the landscape we are navigating through with the delivery chain, and also, the tariff impact and everything. So at the bottom line, I really want to just saying that how much we appreciate your support and testimony and helping us to tell the story.
Thank you, Farshad. Thank you, Director Liu. I will make one more comment, and it's actually that I have a question pointed toward the board and also toward our board support staff. Okay. I think my comment is that, and it leads into the question. My comment is that I get so stressed out, like cortisol levels increase hearing the reality of what is bearing down. And even in communicating with the chairs after calls, there are some just thoughts and efforts and initiatives as we transition into work plan discussions on ways that I would like to show up in support to create a holistic view and communicate this kind of prioritization and tell the story in however I can show up for it. So like, it's just, these budget conversations stress me out. This acutely stresses me out in the way that risk and deferred investment compounds over time. Okay, so I guess my question for the board is, do you all feel stressed out? Does it stress you out? Do you get cortisol release? And that's just a question for everyone on the call. Or am I like overly stressed out? It stresses me out bad though, I'll be honest.
This is Lauren, voting member and co-chair. Yeah, I would say it stresses me out. And I think that comes from a place of caring for our community, right? And I don't necessarily know the answer, especially because, we're volunteers here and we can only dedicate so much time and energy, which that in and of itself can be kind of anxiety inducing of like, I want to give and do more, but I can only have so much to give. So I think these conversations can be valuable in just like discussing efficiencies and how we can support, as community members.
Well, Kyle, take a breath.
Thank you. I do. Thank you. Sorry.
Remember to breathe. Karen Williams, voting member and co-chair. So yes, and yes, I guess I do get stressed, but I think I sort of view that positively, like, well, what we're doing matters. What we're I'm stressed because this is really important stuff, to your point, Lauren. Like, this is really important for our community's well-being, for equity, for environmental protection, restoration. So yeah, it's kind of, it's stress that's sort of makes me feel like I'm taking the energy that I have and I'm sort of using it the best way I can to I'm using what I've got available. And it's being pointed towards something that I firmly believe is important, right? So it's kind of a good stress, bad stress sort of thing. But where to take that from here, this might sort of lead us into the next conversation, like, well, what do we do about it? And how can we continue to continue to be effective and be even more effective and be more strategic and again, given our limited person power, and even within a person, the amount of energy and time that any one community member volunteer has to devote, how can we be like super strategic with that? And I was thinking that, so what, right, sorry, preface one more little bit of stress that I get that isn't necessarily positive stress is like when I sense that the receivers of the information that we're trying to convey, I guess, are not assigning quite the same value or heft to what we're saying. Like, when we say deferring costs now is, we understand that balances the budget, but the trade-offs are massively and adversely impactful, even 1 year hence, let alone 5 years, 10 years, 20 years hence. And feeling like I'm saying that the best I know how in my sort of layperson speak, and that it's just kind of not resonating. That I find stressful. Like, how can I say this differently? How can I be more, how can we, again, be sort of more effective in conveying what we feel is like, I mean, Farshad used the word existential, and I don't think that's hyperbolic. I mean, how do we convey an existential, crisis, so that, not so that it's overwhelming and, we throw up our hands and say we can't do anything about it, but how can we stick with the plan, right? How can we, little by little, step by step, milestone by milestone, address what is a massive public health and environmental problem, right? So I was thinking that maybe, while public testimony, being seen, being in the room certainly has its merit, and we should continue to do that. But I wonder if maybe the the time has come to I would say, Kyle, build on some a strategy that you floated multiple times over the last several months, which is more direct engagement with council members as people who live in their districts, right? We're community members, we're volunteers on the pub board, and we are your constituents. And I was wondering if we might want to talk about, as a next step, is sort of dividing up, among pub members, those who are willing and have the time to try and schedule, maybe with Amy's and Jonalyn's help, see if we can schedule time with, if not the council member, perhaps their staff, their chief of staff, and get 15-20 minutes to just convey our concerns about the current budgetary situation with the two utility bureaus, and just talk one-on-one, as opposed to kind of the formal 3-minute testimony, right? But actually have a conversation. That's what I was going to suggest as maybe a place we go next. Interested to hear if anybody thinks that has merit.
I will take the floor next. Kyle Chipman, voting member. I'm going to share first my instincts around where my instincts are pointing in this direction, and then respond directly to my thoughts on that proposal, Karen, reaching out or communicating directly with council members. My instincts, and this is not fully formed. It's a thought I floated out in past conversations just within Pub. It still points to using a mapping interface to also stretch to time to try to communicate the scale and really the key driver of this, and why I asked that question about the role that a comprehensive citywide asset management system, structure, portfolio, having that be the underbelly to allow for direct points of comparison. So it's not each bureau managing their assets and then it's difficult to compare with similar parameters or metrics. But if it's all brought in under one hood, then using a map to really help communicate and drive home in this district, or there are these risks, and also stretching with the projection of time. With this much delay, it incurs this much additional risk and this much additional cost. It's part of a longer goal that I really just want to dive into personally, which is also if there's a way long-term to connect ratepayer bills to that investment to really help bridge. It's not just I'm given money and I don't know where it's going, but I give money and it's helping to, these capital improvement projects or these points of investment. But that's my gut is like, and I don't know the realistic lift in time and even the new people that are required to help drive and implement that comprehensive portfolio level view across all bureaus. If that's even the right language, but that feels like a route. And the reason I bring that point up is without vision and strategy, if I were to go to council, I would mainly just have stress. And I don't want, that's also why I asked the question. I don't want to just come with that energy without here's a vision behind it to help address the need. So I'm down to start to talk to council members with vision and clarity of a path forward. And for me, that still feels like that citywide asset management, both from the auditor's recommendation and the most recent reading from this week, feels in the pocket.
As staff, this is Amy. I agree that the citywide asset management and the policy direction and emphasis prioritization is a really important element. And I also think part of managing the stress and making the work meaningful is also narrowing in on the points or the area within your oversight and where you can have impact. Because the citywide asset issue, as mentioned, is existential, and a huge component of that requires a lot of general fund that is not available to address. And so the plan will be a very long one, and somewhat separate from the utilities, because the utilities have a rate structure in order to invest in the infrastructure required to maintain the utilities. And so honestly, the outlook for the utilities is very different from those that require a funding source that doesn't exist, right? I mean, the utilities have been effectively doing their financial planning. Now they haven't been able to implement rates and funding mechanisms that align with what those plans were. And that's part of what Pub's testimony has been, is that repeated chipping away at that is having, growing that deferred maintenance. And so I do think that there's a benefit. There certainly is a benefit to visualizing and making that data easy to access through mapping data and other tools that make it accessible to everybody. And I do think it could be helpful in those conversations. I also, I think that some of the data that even in the way it was presented to council during the work sessions by DCA Donapal and the Bureau leadership about the reality of just the current fiscal year and the outcomes that were okay. Let me take a step back. So at the rate hearing and prior work sessions, PUB advocated for return to the rate in the financial plan, right? And so there that resonated and was also coming from some of the council members. And so it advanced. And yet the reality of that, so council members could take that and think that, okay, we did what was necessary for the utilities to deal with their infrastructure, and it wasn't, right? I mean, it was a very small step, a return to a rate that isn't updated to incorporate all of the financial challenges that are facing those bureaus and in the current fiscal year, let alone moving forward. And so the reality of how that was summarized in the work sessions earlier this week, I think is helpful because it does narrow in on where some of that gap still exists and that it's not addressing that fundamental problem. And I do think that that's one area where PUB's advocacy can be meaningful because there is the potential for that to resonate. We saw that that message was resonating. It's just that the solution that was implemented, the return to the financial plan rate, was not a solution for the problem. It was a small incremental step. It has impact. It's something to feel good about because it's better than having been cut an additional 5% without meaning, but it didn't get there. And I can pull them up if it's helpful. There were a couple slides that were shared specifically during that presentation that I think I just want to make sure that PUB members take a look at to understand just for the current fiscal year what the outcomes were based on what was advocated for, because I do think those conversations with council members could be really valuable. It is where you could have great impact in moving their learning forward on the issues. And we just need to make sure that we have as full of a picture as possible going into those conversations so that the impact is what you want it to be, not, as I think Kyla said, a symbolic one, right? You know, like that it truly has the impact that you're intending.
Did you want to move to those slides, Amy?
Yeah, sorry, I was
I'd
just
read
trying
that.
to navigate
Oh,
to
yeah,
them, but
yeah, I was
I'll
gonna say, I
just
think that
skip
would be
a couple and we can come back. So I thought that I certainly encourage folks, if you haven't, to watch either the work session that they had earlier this week or probably the one that I'm sure all the leaders in this room are preparing for or still getting ready for this afternoon, because at 2:00 I think is when they go to the full council and share the similar information that they shared during the committee earlier this week. And in that, some of these lists were meaningful and helpful to me as I understood where they're at right now, because you can see on the left-hand side, this is just for one of the two bureaus, and Water had a similar slide. It lays out, you know, what they had to do in order to reach some of the goals from this original submission in the city administrator's budget. And then the reductions that were made in order to achieve a balanced budget to accommodate the increased city costs of 3.5 million, the 3 million for PBOT work agreement, et cetera, and then the adjustments that they had to make to balance to that. And then the mayor's proposed budget, which did incorporate the change that PUB was advocating for. At the very bottom here, you can see it highlighted as the 5% rate restoration of the 1.1 million. But in addition to that, all these other things have happened that still impact their bottom line. So a lot of the cuts that were originally being proposed, both by Water Bureau and BES, still have to be taken because there are new funding elements that have been added in the proposed budget. Now, I don't know what the approved will or what the next steps will include, but this is what has moved forward so far, because the piece that you were advocating for is helpful. It fills a 1.1 million gap, but it doesn't actually return to what the original plan was because new elements have been added. And so you can see the same is true in Water Bureau's budget as well, because they've had significant increases in their labor expenses. And so in the end, the balancing of the budget still requires a depth of cuts that, the pub was hoping would not happen. Now, there's still significant financial planning that needs to be true up based on the realities that they're facing today. And they've, for several years now have been held to the financial plan of the prior year, or the rate that was set there, without being able to true up to what's really happening with the cost of construction and what's happening with labor contracts and other things. And so I suspect that there's, significant financial planning taking place at those bureaus and doing future planning. But during a time of transition, significant things are happening. I did include too just their combined rate projection, just because this is something you've seen before. And again, this is as it sits right now, not potentially with the real planning that might be necessary to identify what would it look like if you were effectively making progress on that backlog of deferred maintenance, and what funding, what would the funding structure look like moving you forward in that direction. And that may be, at least where I see potential value for PUB to be advocating for something that would move that forward.
Kyle Chipman, voting member. I have a quick question. This might be best directed towards Amy. And I just want to clarify my own understanding for general messaging. It's my understanding that basically this topic of deferred investment and the way that it compounds not only risk but cost over time, this is really what Bureau of Transportation is going through right now. And it's like kind of all coalesced. We're not quite in that moment for BES and PWB, but it's like super close. Is that pretty much accurate? Or is that inaccurate?
I don't know how the trajectories, line up, but yes, that's been part of the messaging, at least that we've proposed in some of the testimony that you shared, is that, yeah, transportation is suffering from lack of funding, and thus, the lack of maintenance that's required. And so it's in a more deteriorated state. That is what the utilities, have been, because of their funding structures, able to more proactively address, but for many years have been slipping, in the wrong direction. And so often the things that have to get delayed, the capital projects that get put off, are the ones that aren't immediate regulatory requirements, right? So it's the repair of the thing that hasn't happened yet, and the prevention that comes from that. So I think that's some of what Farshad was acknowledging with the sinkholes experience this past month, is you start to see the deterioration, and the more expensive cost of responding to that as a result of having not been able to do the preventative work over time.
Thank you. I just wanted to reaffirm that understanding. It feels like in terms of messaging, it's a very direct analog with the challenges that everyone kind of knows and feels in hand as it relates to these additional bureaus. And probably it just feels even more severe, like what the kind of repairs that have to get incurred. Okay, thank you.
And I think, not to add to your stress level, but the other piece that has happened in the past week have also been work sessions at the full council regarding the citywide realignment. And I did want to just flag those for you all as well, because, I don't expect you to keep up on all the presentations. And I thought that there were some noteworthy components of that, because it does, it will have impact to the utilities and I thought at least sharing a little bit of information about some of the timelines that I heard. So this is the mayor's proposal in the budget for the 20% reduction in core services. It's clear that that 20% was, an estimate based on what they felt was a target to work towards that was substantial and would require, good work by all of those service areas. So it won't be exactly 20%. There will be some variation in different service areas, but the goal is to achieve half of that in next fiscal year, with all of the changes implemented by the end of next fiscal year, so that then the subsequent year would achieve the full reduction. Little less than half of that is to general fund, over half is to non-general fund, because all of the bureaus like utilities pay into a lot of those core services or have staff on their side that do that. So the key areas here are the ones that are listed. So communications is where they're starting first, with intention to have planning happening right now, implementation happening between July and September, to convene communications. Next is community engagement, equity, finance, and accounting, which launch, I believe, all in fall, with implementation by end of the calendar year or soon thereafter, I think by spring. And then human resources would be one of the last, because they will be managing all of the layoffs and other implications of moving staff and ensuring classifications are right, that kind of stuff. So that would be target in the last quarter of next April to June of 2026. Technology, they have said, is not included, because they anticipate the need to reinvest in technology in order to move the organization forward. And there was also conversation about anticipating a lot more council discussions and budget amendments throughout the year as it moves forward. The conversation around this and the potential amendments that are being proposed by council, it's hard to tell, where exactly this will be moving, but I wanted you to just be aware of some of that timeline, because it does have implications for the bureaus that you oversee as well. I think that's it at a high level. As far as where we're at right now in the process, there's a work session this afternoon for the public works surface area. I believe some of the presentation is very similar to what was the work session on Monday. And so some of that content will be similar, but it will be the first opportunity to see all of council and what some of their questions will be specific to the public works service area. So we'll pay attention to that and keep you updated, send you updates if there's some interesting content that comes from there. The amendments that are coming from council, and there's lots of indication that everybody has amendments that will be forthcoming, and those are due by the end of the week. So we'll be seeing more about that and any that have implications for the utilities. There is the council hearing on the approved budget on May 21st. So that will be the next hearing opportunity. There are some work sessions that take place after that, and then final actions to adopt the budget. But as far as opportunities for potential public input, the hearing is one of those if there were interest. Although much as Karen proposed, really the question is for all of you whether there is desire for additional feedback through the remainder of this budget process, and whether that takes the form of testimony, written follow-up, or outreach to council members directly. The lower list here, we won't really get into right now due to limited time, but that's just kind of looking forward to kind of the months as we move throughout summer, and other major efforts continue to go forward that do have budget implications, including the guidance development for next budget cycle as well. So just being conscious of that.
I guess I was going to ask Lauren and Karen, do you have any instincts on these points that are either on the screen or the timeline that Amy shared?
Well, this is Karen Williams, voting member. I feel like the door's closing pretty fast for us to say anything more and have any more opportunity to influence on this budget. I mean, we've got a week, right? Or not even. When is the 21st? First is a
Next Wednesday.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 5 days, right? I mean, so this was a good reality check. I mean, I was envisioning that, I guess I was envisioning that we had more time. So I was thinking there would be time to schedule meetings and have some face-to-face time with city council staff, and maybe, get at them one more time before they vote on the approved budget. And I'm seeing now that we don't have that time. So I think, outreach to council members, I think is, still vitally important. I mean, armed as you say, Kyle, with, good geographically relevant data, I think is a great idea, but I don't think we can do that in the next 5 days. So I guess that's my instinct. I mean, I don't want to just say, okay, well, we're done, give up. I'm just not quite coming to what we could meaningfully do in 5 days. That's going to shift the momentum. But love to hear your thoughts, Lauren. And
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we're low on time, and maybe that's something that we can include in our work plan of like making sure we're staying engaged as early as possible, so that, because this seems like a fairly consistent issue that we've brought up multiple times. So I think that's something that we can, I think that's something that we can work into for the future. And then if there are any like hard feelings about like notes or thoughts that somebody would like to go to council and has the capacity to write those up, I would be happy to review them. I personally don't have the capacity to do a written follow-up, but I would absolutely make time to review something like that. But I agree. I think it's a tough time crunch.
And this is Amy, one more thing I'll add and then pass it to Kyle is that I didn't include here, and is part of the work planning for next year, is the opportunity for some sort of work session with council. And I presume that will be through the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. But that is something that we will work on. But that is an opportunity to talk about both what has transpired over the past year, what you're planning for the upcoming year, but also have some engagement directly with council around these issues, and would allow some time for more information gathering and to be armed with kind of more data to kind of move that conversation forward. So that's another opportunity that I see as potentially significant one, given the new structure, and that it is something that you have code that says that you'll have that opportunity with council annually. So that is an important one, I think.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm in agreement. Kyle Chipman, voting member. I'm in agreement with Karen, Lauren, and Amy. I think that as we approach the work plan with intention, which is really to say that we are crafting a vision of how we can show up and contribute and offer support or guidance, I think that also changes the nature of this body, which, and this is not shade throwing, I don't say this, but it's felt as a reactive body where we basically excellent materials, but it's in preparation for a meeting as opposed to how we want to show up to anticipate. And then we can be much more proactive and then be ready for these conversations rather than, oh God, we have this amount of time. We got to react in response to something that's external. That's the beginning glimmer of the vision that I was sharing. That's where my head's at, but we build that vision in consensus and in collaboration. I do have a question, which is I would personally like to submit written testimony for that requires city administrator to develop citywide asset management strategy. Blah, 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 blah. I would like to submit that. Is that something that, do I call out I'm a member of PUB? Do I just say I'm a private citizen, or what? How do I actually and I can have this conversation offline if it's to not take the group's
Yeah,
time.
we can talk about that, but just for the record, you can state your that you belong to PUB, but that you're speaking as an individual member. If it's the content is something that the full PUB has not discussed and approved, you also can say that you believe it aligns with some of the priorities that PUB has discussed. So when in question, check in with us and we can confirm.
Cool. Yeah. I will not use inflammatory language.
So I'm doing a time check and we are a bit behind schedule. So I am going to suggest that we quickly touch on recruitment for the final pieces, and we will have a deeper work plan and future planning conversation at the June 3rd meeting. If that sounds good to you three. And the ex officios too. I didn't mean to leave you out of the conversation.
I'm so sorry. Actually, before we transition, I have one minor observation for the final budget, which I'm sure will be caught, but I just noticed in the proposed mayor's proposed budget, Dawn and Eddie or Edward were still listed as directors, and I just wanted to make sure. I'm sure it will be, but Director Light and Director Liu are both represented as the interim directors or directors of the bureaus.
Jonalyn, do you want to lead this conversation?
Sure, happy to. With a little bit of time, what I want to convey with a little bit of urgency is that we do need volunteers to help with recruitment, but Amy and I are doing as much of the background work as possible so that basically any subcommittee on recruitment would just need to meet 1 or 2 times. So actual coordinating schedules should be limited to about 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, hopefully 1 session. And then the rest of that work could be done independently, as Amy and I will do the group interviews, which we are in the process of getting scheduled as soon as possible now. And we had some really great applications, so we're excited about the group that we have, even though it's not a ton of applications. It's really a good group, so it's gonna, I suspect it's gonna be a tough decision. So we will do recorded interviews with with groups of 3 to 4 candidates, and then those will be up to 1 hour. Could end a little early, but no longer than 1 hour. So that should be 3 1-hour interview sessions that folks would need to listen to. Of course, you can always speed up a recorded interview to 1.5 speed, which I find very easy to listen to personally. And then just coming to that exactly. The time commitment is, we need about 2 to 3 pub members. Any bureau staff or leaders would be wonderful. We have been checking in with city leadership. We'll see if we can get anyone from, you know, council staff or anything like that to also participate. So it should be about 3 to 4 hours on your own, and then meet for that appointment recommendation, 1 to 1.5 hours. So, most likely, most of this work will be done in June, just looking at the calendar. So I wonder if anybody has any questions, or I know we only have 3 voting members here. I would think ex officio members would also be welcome to participate.
Yes. Yes.
So you're welcome to volunteer now, ask questions now, or, you know, email me if you've got other questions you want to talk about later. And Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle Chipman, voting member. I am traveling throughout June, but like I'm down to show up. So if
Mhm.
there's like strong excitement from other people, I will absolutely defer. But if there is zero like chatter or communication, then I'll step up into this capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for
Appreciate
sure.
your willingness. Lauren?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I have field work and some travel. At least my May is pretty slammed. So yeah, I'm same boat. If you have members that have more free time, please feel free to defer to them, but I can be
Okay.
I can step up if you get crickets.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot. And Karen?
And yeah, that's Karen Williams, voting member, and that's a volunteer hand. So I can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Karen. And Kyle?
Another point of interest in offering time is how like I'm gonna prepare this as I do all my other stuff. Like, is there any appetite to make this a collaborative exercise, or that foregoes like how we communicate outside? Like we all do our work independently and then converge in a meeting.
I might defer to Amy to answer that in terms of the public meetings. I believe that type of deliberation would be like a subcommittee.
Yeah, we operate it like a subcommittee. So the meetings where we're convening and deliberating are public meetings. So we have, there may be some tools we can talk about offline, Kyle, about whether the tools that you use might be helpful for just convening the information for those meetings, and make sure that they would be allowable. We've typically just done that through staff, and then we, share that information during the public meeting and talk through it and make a final recommendation that then goes to the full pub. Yeah, but then the details are personal evaluations and just ranking, much like you do any sort of interview.
Cool. The reason I bring up the point is not to make a whole thing out of it. Like, I'm not even saying I have 100% capacity, but it's mainly, I reflect on the structure I set up for our hiring process or our recruitment and kind of interview process. It's just helpful to have like set shared expectations of what kind of criteria are being considered or under consideration, and then having the ability to pool that information. So then when you hit the conversation, it's not like take 20 minutes to have everybody kind of click into sync, but there's kind of consensus and agreement and some velocity as the meeting starts. That's where my head's at with that notion.
Yes, absolutely. Good.
Cool.
And then if there aren't any more questions, I also would love to get a volunteer to participate in ARC next meeting, the final ARC meeting of this fiscal year. You don't have to tell me right now, but if you're able to volunteer for that on Tuesday, June 10th, that would be lovely.
All right. The one other announcement that I did want to just mention is that the city City of Portland Professional Workers Union. I think that's what CPPW stands for. They have still been in active negotiations with the city, but have declared impasse. And so I think just right after our next meeting is when we'll find out kind of what the next steps are, but just wanted you to be aware because it does impact staff within the utilities as well as within the budget office and your support staff. So just as an FYI. So be looking for our survey via email so that we can figure out and work out our June meeting schedule because it will be an important one and we will want to try to achieve quorum if possible. So we will do our best to try to find a time that is the maximum number of people and works easiest for you all. Kyle, go ahead.
Thank you. Kyle Chipman, voting member. This is just if there could be like maybe, sorry. As our next meeting focuses in, either next meeting or a future meeting focuses in on work plan, I would just like to request a couple minutes before we start talking about the actual initiatives or efforts to talk also about the form the work plan takes. I still have a proposed format I like from last September or so, and it's more about how to provide ongoing update, status, notes, timing expectation, resources. Like we kind of treat it like a fully fledged, like an ongoing work plan and an ongoing reference. So I'd like to dedicate some time to the format as much as the content.
All right, we will put that as part of the tentative plan for that discussion.
Kick butt. All the Bureau leadership and representatives kick butt at your working session this afternoon.
Yeah.
I know Director Liu had to drop off, and I'm sure all the other leadership needs a little bit of time before they move into that conversation, but appreciate that so many of you were able to still show up today and participate in the conversation. Thank you for that.
I'll just say thank you, Kyle. Appreciate the support that we get from PUB.
Can I say, and please don't stress, because the beauty is that now we are working on a plan that will help us address these issues. So that is critical. So don't stress. We're moving in the right direction from reaction to proactivity. So
you know, my immediate response, like, thanks, Mom. Thank you. Thank you, though, for real. Thank you very much.
Indeed, appreciate everyone's time from city leadership and, as always, our terrific budget staff. Well, let's adjourn our meeting. I'll go nourish ourselves and get ready for an exciting afternoon. See you all